As a reviewer, it's very rare that I get products that I believe will completely change the world and how we use technology. Now, I get tons of products that I like, love even, but that doesn't mean that I think they'll change how we do everything forever. I loved the DJI Neo, that drone that flew itself, but I don't want to walk into a cafe and see dozens of autonomous drones buzzing around trying to follow people. I loved the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and I still do. I'm using it to this day, with USB-C and support for ProRes video and 5x telephoto. But that's not changing the world even remotely as close as the iPhone initially did in 2007 when it first launched. But these are going to change mobile tech forever. These are a glance into our future. And you should not buy them. Let me rephrase that a bit. These are a first generation product, and the Even G1s from Even Realities still have a long way to go and a long line of revisions, hardware upgrades and price drops before they even come close to being the next iPhone. And all of that's assuming that they don't get Sherlocked by a bigger company. But if you're like me, you've got a couple $100 burning a hole in your pocket, and you really love being on the bleeding edge of technology, you are going to love these. My name is Harry, you're watching Probably Hades, and this is my review of the Even G1 smart glasses. Before I go any further, I need to tell you that I am engaged in Meta Ray-Ban's creator affiliate program. I've created sponsored content with them in the past, and I will continue to do so. As you might be able to tell throughout this video, Meta's partnership with me did not impact my opinion on these, and I will not be changing my statements here at all because of this partnership, but I figured it would be worth mentioning. For the sake of keeping my integrity as a reviewer, I won't be including my paid link for the Meta Ray-Bans in this video description. I'd usually put this at the end of the video, but again, for the sake of my integrity, neither Meta nor Even Realities had any input into the content of this video or even had an early review. Unfortunately for my bank account, these were not sent to me by Even Realities. I purchased these with my own funds, and I've never had any communications with them in the past. The Even G1s have a very premium unboxing experience, from the custom shipping box printed with the Even Realities logo, which made me very glad I was home to receive this package, to the multitude of pull tabs and precise organization of accessories, all made entirely from recyclable materials. Great job, Even Realities. In the box, you'll get the Even G1s and charging case, a branded cleaning cloth, a braided USB-C to C cable that doesn't do data transfer but does do a pretty decent job at charging, and a set of replacement nose bridge pads. Opening up the charging case using the magnetic flip open top reveals the glasses in their full glory. And when I say glory, I truly mean it. The hardware on these is extraordinarily premium in literally every aspect. Even the charging case opens beautifully and feels sturdy. You're definitely meant to just leave the case on a desk instead of taking it with you like some other smart glasses, which is made possible due to the 1.5 days of battery life of standard use that Even Realities advertises. That battery life comes from the 160 mAh of battery split between the two compute pods, and can be topped up 2.5 times for around 4 days of use from the 2000 mAh battery in the case. They're so confident you'll never need to worry about battery life that it doesn't even appear on the dashboard, which I'll get into shortly. And they're right, I've never even gotten close to running these low in my use. Like the Meta Ray-Ban charging case, they do use wireless charging for the top-ups, but they don't have any sort of contact pins. It's entirely invisible. I'm not 100% sure what standard they're using here. I'm guessing that it's not Qi or something off the shelf, but they don't list it on the website. The charging here does need you to close it in a specific way, closing the left temple first, but you do get used to it, and the case yells at you with the LED indicator on the front if you do it wrong. Moving on to the glasses, these are built even better. Made with possibly the wildest and kind of most overkill materials that Even Realities could get their hands on, with sandstone infused magnesium alloy for the frame coating and temples made of hypoallergenic titanium alloy and silicone, these look and feel incredible. They're extremely lightweight, getting ever so closer to the dream of smart glasses that feel exactly like normal glasses. And all of the weight that comes from the actual compute here is distributed to the compute pods that go behind your ears, meaning they won't really slide down or even really feel like anything is there. These are much easier to wear over extended periods of time compared to the stock Meta Ray-Bans. I know that you can get accessories for the Ray-Bans that make them more comfortable, but Even just knocks it out of the park here. The silicone nose pads also stop the glasses from sitting directly on your face, and the clear lenses that I opted for, as I don't personally need a prescription, are very high high quality and look great. You cannot see where the screen section is at all, even when it's on. Like I just mentioned, I don't have a prescription, so I can't really speak on the quality of their $150 standard prescription lenses or the other ultra-fit prescription types available exclusively through their optician partners, which require a custom fitting session at a physical location. I don't even want to think about how much that would be, including the price that I would need to pay for a flight ticket, considering they don't have a physical retail presence in Australia. I also would like to mention that unlike the Ray-Ban Metas, these aren't transition lenses. You can get a magnetic sunglass clip that just attaches to the front and turns them into sunglasses. I didn't personally opt for those because I didn't want to spend the extra $100 that they would cost, and also I don't want another thing to carry around, considering the carrying case is an extra $30 just for the clip, but they seem to be pretty good if Mr. Mobile is someone that can be trusted, and I do, so. One thing I do want to mention is that I do notice a very slight discomfort behind my ears sometimes when I'm wearing them for extended periods of time, but I do also tend to notice this on the Meta Ray-Bans, and it doesn't happen often, so it's probably just a me thing. I also don't wear glasses usually, just like how I didn't wear a watch until my first smartwatch, so that could just be an issue that exists on standard prescription frames that I didn't know about until now. Setting these up is very simple, and it's honestly kind of magical when you put them on for the first time. It's a weird feeling, because you should know what you're getting into here. It's a very similar experience to a lot of mixed reality headsets, and yet, when I first put them on, I was just as shocked as I was when I tried the Quest 2, Quest 3, and Vision Pro for the first time. Holy sh... Damn! Setup, like essentially everything else on these, is done through the Even Realities app. You pair the two compute pods to your phone individually, which is interesting, but whatever, and it walks you through how to use the touch points and head up, both of which I'll get into later, and also asks for the necessary permissions for notifications, calls, location, etc. All of those are actually needed for functionality on the device, it's not just weird data collection. It also gets you to select what angle you want to use head up at, which is essentially just how far do you want to look up before it actually does anything. And while we're in the app, considering we were just here in the setup, it's a pretty decent hardware app. It's nicely designed on both iOS and Android, and neither platform lacks or includes functionality that isn't in the other. Unlike Meta View, for example, which lacks Apple Music support on Android and only has photo previews and notifications on iOS. All of the things you'll want to configure are here, along with any data that is collected during use, like when you make a note or ask the built-in AI anything. Some things here can be controlled on the glasses directly, like toggling silent mode, but some things, like display brightness, do need to be controlled in the app. In the features that do require you to load something from an external source, like an address into navigation or a script into Teleprompt, that's also done here, and I'll get into both of those later. Surprisingly, for a piece of hardware that is this niche, there aren't any advertisements, subscription fees, or really any functionality that is locked behind a paywall, aside from Translate Pro, where you can buy hours for, although standard translation functionality is free. You can tell that this is, like the product, a first-generation app. Some features are just completely broken, like the access control menu just bringing you to the app's page in Apple's settings app with no actual option in there, but realistically, even with that in consideration, it does basically everything you'd need from an app for a wearable. The only thing that could maybe be cool is a web UI for viewing notes and AI queries on a computer, but realistically, I'm just nitpicking, and I would much rather them focus on the mobile and glasses experience first. Of course, to see that software, you're gonna need a screen, and even with all of the talks about the premium materials and build quality, the screen is the most impressive part about these by far. And honestly, on paper, the screen isn't even that impressive, with a whopping 640 by 200 resolution that can only display the color green, an absolutely pro motion killing 20 Hz display, and 1000 nits of brightness, which actually is pretty good. Even with those mediocre specs in mind, viewing your dashboard and notifications looks sharp, and the advertised 98% pass-through really actually feels like 100%. That aforementioned matrix screen monochromatic display is definitely not going to be for everyone, but I am absolutely obsessed with how it looks. It makes me want to enable 24-hour time for my dashboard, and it's gotten me to add a stock chart when realistically, I couldn't care less about the value of Apple stock. It just looks fucking sick. Although it definitely helps that I am very accustomed to VR displays. My first experience was on a Google Cardboard. I've been in the trenches. Some other people who I gave this to whose eyes are less trained than mine did note a very slight amount of strain on the eyes, but this is easily rectified by just moving the virtual screen distance further away, making it easier to focus on. It defaults to a distance of 3 meters away, and I tend to prefer it at around 1.5 meters to reduce the amount of times where it feels like I'm looking straight through a wall to check a text message. The default default height was also a little bit too high for me, and I ended up moving it closer to the center. When you are focused on the screen, chances are you're going to be looking at the dashboard, the even G1's equivalent of the home screen. It is a lot of fun to just glance up into midair and see your calendar, the weather, the time and date, the notifications you've got, and one of 4 widget selections: stocks, news headlines, a map, and your QuickNotes. I'll get into QuickNotes later, but the other ones are exactly what you'd expect. They all work very well, and the only thing that really annoys me is using the Maps widget puts the big location indicator on the dynamic island on my iPhone. And while I personally wish it was more information dense, I would love to have my stocks and notes there on the dashboard at the same time. You can also make it less dense if you prefer. I do have a few features that I would love to see as options on the dashboard too, but I'll leave those and the other wishes I have for the end. If you're not using the dashboard or any of the other features, you'll probably just be looking at a notification from your phone. And yeah, I'm gonna put it on record that seeing my texts, emails, bank notifications, basically whatever I want, is both really cool and entirely unnecessary. Using my laptop and just watching 2FA login codes appear in my vision when I need to enter them is so cool, and again, just way too overkill for most people. You know, it brings me joy. You can have your notifications appear as a small icon requiring you to tilt your head to see the full content, or you can just have the full text appear as soon as you receive it. I wish I had more precision over this specific feature as opposed to just a binary on or off, like having emails or Instagram notifications require a head tilt and having texts and calls appear instantly. You can at least filter specific apps to come through the glasses and have the rest stay on your phone. So we're not yet in the world of having Uber Eats promos just show up in your line of sight. Halliday's smart glasses do this really well, allowing some notifications to be filtered and pinned based on both the app and the contents of the notification. So you could theoretically filter out any text message with the word stop or unsubscribe to filter out SMS marketing, or filter out Instagram notifications with the word liked to try and only get DMs. I mentioned being a tad bit of a VR veteran earlier, but you don't need to be one to realize that if you've used a modern headset with pass-through before, like the Quest 3 or the Vision Pro, UI elements there stay very locked into place. It makes it much easier to read, and it's a huge contrast from the even G1s. Because they have no cameras or sensors, the UI has absolutely no stabilization whatsoever. It can make the UI very shaky and difficult to see. I took these out for a run, took advantage of the advertised water resistance as I sweat all over them, and I had to seriously focus or just slow down entirely to be able to see the dashboard while I was moving. It was during that run that I also discovered the display can be very difficult to see in direct sunlight, although it is definitely possible, thanks to that 1000 nit brightness and automatic brightness adjustment, even if that adjustment does take a few seconds to actually change anything after you've activated the display. Before I get into the rest of the software features, I want to quickly talk about the connectivity and software interactions here. The glasses use Bluetooth Low Energy 5.2 to connect both of the compute pods to your phone, and they both connect individually like I mentioned earlier. The only real issue with that here is that you'll have 2 Bluetooth devices in your phone for the same thing, but realistically, who actually cares? In my early stages of use on my Z Fold 4, I had a very rare occurrence where the 2 pods would fall out of sync and display different images for each eye, leading to a display that was basically unreadable unless you closed one eye, but this issue hasn't happened at all since moving back to my iPhone. But that's not to say iOS has no issues either. I tend to find that it takes a bit longer for them to reconnect while being inactive in the case for a while. To be clear, I'm pretty confident that's entirely Apple's fault. Android is much more lenient when it comes to background processors, but it is something that you might want to know. Once you get it initially connected though, it keeps a very solid connection on both operating systems. Onto the interactions, these are either really cool or just kind of one of the interactions that exists in the world. First off, just to get it out of the way, you cannot interact with notifications. No replying to texts, archiving emails, nothing. Just reading them. For features on the glasses that you can interact with, like Teleprompt or QuickNotes, you're using these touch controls that sit on the compute pods behind your ears. When the even G2s inevitably come out, I need a complete overhaul here. They're in a weird position, they're unreliable, and they seriously do not like long hair. I don't know if you can tell, but I picked up on that almost immediately. I can basically only use these with my hair tied back, and even without long hair, you're still going to have some quirks. I managed to trigger a quick note recording with a set of headphones. However, once you get past the touch controls, and look, realistically, you do get used to them, the microphones work great for the interactions that are available here. They transcribe speech really well in most cases, and that is all they really do. While it definitely could be cool to use the microphones here for other purposes, it's probably good that you can't because they do sound pretty terrible.
You can only hear the audio straight from them when you're listening to a recording of the audio from a QuickNote, which is why I'm holding the back of my ear right now.
The other main way of interacting is the header. I've been talking about this through essentially the whole video so far, and it is the way you'll get more information on anything. All you need to do is tilt your head to the angle that you set in the app. If you get a notification icon, for example, you can just head up to view the whole thing. If you're looking for the time or the weather, you can just head up to view your dashboard. It works much better than the touch points, with the only caveat being that you look like you're just kind of staring off into the distance when you're looking at the stock market. I would love to see them replicate the Halliday control method in a future generation. Halliday uses a smart ring with a built-in touchpad that lets you control the glasses with complete discretion. Unlike the Meta Ray-Bans, cameras and speakers are not present here. This is both a blessing and a curse. The lack of those hardware pieces means a much lighter and thinner enclosure. It makes them more feasible to wear in environments where cameras aren't accepted, and it makes the battery last much longer. Although I do seriously find myself missing the speakers a lot. I've had to retrain myself to leave the house with my AirPods instead of leaving them on the charging stand, which might be the most first world problem of all time. Back onto the software features, I'm starting with the big guns, QuickNotes. This feature is an absolute game changer, so much so that I've already attempted to activate it by holding the touch point that just doesn't exist when I'm wearing my Meta Ray-Bans. You can start recording a QuickNote by touching and holding the touch point on the right hand side, which shows you a visual confirmation that it started recording. Once you let go, it stops recording and sends it off to your phone for transcription and AI summarization, both of which work really nicely. Up to 4 recent notes can be stored on the glasses to display on the dashboard if you have the note widget selected, and they also display no matter what if your phone disconnects from the glasses at all. You can see all of your recorded notes with the full transcription and AI summary in the Even app, and you can also pick which 4 notes you want saved to the glasses. It doesn't just have to be your 4 most recent. If you decide that the summary or transcription is incorrect, you can edit both of them and reference the originally recorded audio and decide whether you want the summary or the full transcription displayed on the glasses. Having the ability to edit those notes is a function that I welcome very much. I'm open arms, I'm giving that function a hug, considering I've had my app rethink notes about where I parked into statements that would leave me under investigation. When you are recording a note, there isn't any lenience if you let go of the touch point and you're still speaking. It will just cut you off mid-sentence. That would be fine if the touch points were actually reliable, but I've had moments where I haven't moved my finger at all and it just stops after a few seconds and cuts me off. And it's not like there's a recording limit if there is one. I have recorded longer notes than that. It just stopped. Even though the touch points aren't as reliable as I would like to, I prefer this over it just trying to figure out whether you're speaking or not. When you need to be holding down, it stops the microphones from picking up background speech as your voice and doesn't keep recording others' conversations into your personal notes. If Meta decides to steal any functionality from these to implement into a software update, it would be this. Just being able to hold down on the touchpad on those glasses to start speaking and recording a note would be excellent. I know you can save reminders with Meta AI, but it's not the same. Next up, Teleprompt. I've been using it this entire time. As you might have known, I need a script in front of me for basically everything I shoot. In recent history, I've been mounting my iPhone or just putting the Z Fold down on top of the camera and just glancing up at it, using the 8-bit Dome Micro to scroll up and down. With the Even G1s, you can import scripts directly into the glasses and have it scroll through your script as you're saying the words, without worrying about whether it'll scroll too fast or worrying about scrolling manually. I can imagine this particularly being a great feature for in-person speeches like class presentations, where it might not be acceptable or as feasible to have a teleprompter in front of you, especially as you can set the virtual screen distance to be further out and have it look like you're looking straight at the audience without anything in between you. Plus, if you're in a time-sensitive environment, you've got the clock and a stopwatch next to you at all times. In my job as a YouTuber, I don't typically get to speak in front of live audiences, but I do hope to test these out more as I go into film school, so stay tuned on my Instagram over the next year or so, at probablyhades, and I'll keep testing these out in the real world. In my testing for shooting video, it seemed a bit unnatural at first. What I would recommend doing is setting the virtual screen distance and height to be as close to the camera's real-world position as possible. Unless you've got your camera sitting more than a meter away, I wouldn't use this to replace an actual teleprompter on a set. I can imagine this being really useful for IRL creators, maybe you're vlogging and giving an ad read at the same time. Something you'll notice is that this feature suffers the most from the lack of stabilization in the user interface. If you're the type to move your head a lot like I'm doing right now, while also keeping your eyes on the camera, like I try to, it can get difficult to read. I had to go do something, pretend the lighting is exactly the same and that I'm wearing the same shirt. If you've reviewed your script beforehand and you can remember it after reading it, you should realistically be fine. Just get better at reading scripts. This sounds like a skill issue. Like I mentioned earlier, the teleprompter here listens to your speech and automatically scrolls based on what you've already said. But you can also have it scroll automatically at a set pace and scroll the pages manually using the touch points on the side. I'd seriously recommend using the AI scrolling here, especially over the manual scroll, considering the unreliability of the touch points. In any of those modes, you can also scroll on your phone to adjust the prompter position on the glasses itself, in case any of them have messed up. Importing scripts into the Even app is pretty seamless as well. You can have multiple saved in the app and import them one at a time into the glasses, and you can either type them straight into the native editor or import them from a text file. It seems like any text file will import into the app, considering my Swift project files from high school are appearing as something as I can import, and I'm not 100% sure if this is intentional or not. The transcription features here came out while I was waiting for my pair of G1s to ship, which gives me a lot of confidence that they will continue to update these in the future, and the transcription here works really nicely. It essentially gives you live captions but in real life. You can start transcription in the app and you'll see captions for what is being said to you and by you in front of you. It's got a very similar delay to captions you'd see on a live TV broadcast, and the transcription is incredibly accurate. All of the transcriptions are saved into the app, and while you can't listen to the audio like you can for QuickNotes, you can edit the original transcript and create an AI summary, although summaries here aren't created automatically like they are for QuickNotes. While the UI for the glasses only natively supports English and German, the transcription supports many other languages. I only speak English, so I tested audio from DeepL Translate, and it seemed to transcribe exactly what I was reading on screen. This is incredibly useful for accessibility. I can envision people who might be hard of hearing using this specific feature to aid in having conversations and listening to spoken word around them. Or if you're just like me, you have great hearing, but you just like captions for everything. Whoopsies. Oh my god, I'm bright. Considering, like I just mentioned, I only speak English, translation built into my glasses could be extremely useful, and it works pretty decently. I tested it with DeepL Translate again, as it seems to be very accurate compared to other online translators, and it mostly picked up on what was said. I'm not going to make any huge claims about accuracy here though, as I'm just trusting a different translator. On screen by default, you'll see the translation of what's being said, and you can head up to see the transcribed text if you need to. The only real annoyance here is that it doesn't have conversational functionality. You can see what someone else is saying, but speaking in your native language isn't going to automatically translate it. And even if it did, only you would see the translation unless you gave the other person your phone. Basic translation use is free, but there is Translate Pro, which you can buy hours for. It's not a subscription, but honestly, if I'm the type to use Translate Pro, I'm not sure whether I would rather pay a subscription or have to continue buying hours. I would assume that Translate Pro just uses better translation, but again, as someone who only speaks one language, I don't want to claim anything I can't probably test. You do get an hour of free Translate Pro use worth about $8 with the glasses, which I guess is better than nothing. Pricing ranges from $8 for a single hour up to $70 for 10 hours, saving you $10 for buying in bulk. So I'm editing this now and I actually completely forgot to talk about the AI assistant, Even AI. You can use either Perplexity or ChatGPT. It has both of those integrated, and you can hold down on the left touch point to ask a question, and it's about as accurate as Perplexity or ChatGPT would be. At the moment, they aren't charging for it. Whether they have plans to in the future, I don't know. And for the last party trick, GPS navigation. In theory, this is the killer use case for AR glasses, and on paper here, it would be exactly what you'd want. It supports directions for cycling and walking. You have your next instruction and a small scale map in front of you, along with an ETA and your distance, with a head-up showing both of those stats, along with a map of your entire route and your current speed. Even though the G1s don't have speakers, you can have spoken directions play through your phone into your headphones, and you can view the route on your phone as well.
Now, at first, when I tested the navigation on these, it was laughably bad. Like, I'm talking you can't search for point of interest locations in a major city bad. However, since I've written those notes and reviewed them, I just checked again, and now you can search for point of interest in a major city. So I'm gonna go take a walk somewhere and I'm gonna get back to you on how these work. So as it turns out, they fixed navigation. It actually works really well now. I noticed it did take a little bit to show new direction info, especially if you weren't going exactly where it wanted. There was one point where it said turn left onto the walkway, and the walkway it wanted me to go on was filled with tall grass and slightly unkept, and then the one I was on just made me cross the road a little bit later, but was fully nicely done. And it took a bit to register that it could actually take me on that and that I wasn't going to go across to the other walkway. Other than that, it actually works really well now. Now that I'm thinking about it, I did test initially on Android and now I'm using an iPhone. That could have something to do with it. It doesn't look like it's using Apple Maps because it's on iPhone. It would have to have the Apple Maps logo and it doesn't. So I don't know, but it looks like navigation works pretty decently now.
One thing I do want to mention about navigation I forgot in that B-roll is that you still can't search for like categories of things in the app. So I couldn't, for example, search for cafes in the Even app. I think it'd be cool to be able to send locations from like Apple or Google Maps into the app and have them, you know, just kind of populate there. But I guess at least being able to search POIs now is better than nothing. The feature set that's already here on the Even G1 is incredible, but I can already imagine future possibilities here. Obviously, this is just me speculating about possibility. There's no confirmation here, and you should never buy a product with the hopes that it gets better in a future update. But I'm already imagining like a now playing view on the dashboard for the current media playing on your phone, integrations with Apple Fitness and Strava to show you your heart rate and distance during a workout, for example. You could have your YouTube analytics or a parcel tracker just waiting on the dashboard, maybe even like a live Uber status, similar to how they handle navigation. Basically anything that could work on an Apple Watch would work really nicely here. There is an open source OS that attempts to resolve this by adding a full app store to the Even G1s and a few other smart glasses, but I haven't been able to test it yet because it doesn't have support for iOS. It's called AugmentOS, and if you want to check it out, I'll leave it linked in the description below. I think the biggest hurdle to adoption right now is what I mentioned just a few seconds ago, about how any widget that would work well on an Apple Watch would work really well here. Most people, especially those who aren't in the tech space, aren't going to spend the $600 plus shipping it costs to get these things, when they could spend $200 less on an Apple Watch Series 10 or $200 more for an Apple Watch Ultra 2. Both of those are astronomically more capable than the Even G1s. They're already widely adopted by both consumers and developers, and they've been consistently updated and upgraded for over a decade. These are a first generation product, an incredible tech demo, and a product with some seriously useful functionality, and they work extraordinarily well for a first generation product. But they are a first generation product. The type of person that can spend $600 on these will have an amazing time. If Even Realities can get the price on these down, possibly by not throwing darts at a periodic table for their material choices, and they can build out their software more, they have a shot at being a decently large product. However, like many startups, they're at the grasp of a huge tech company here. Meta is almost certainly going to add heads-up display tech into their next set of Meta Ray-Bans that have much more evolved software and the extra functionality of cameras and microphones, which spells an almost certain doom for Even's chance at mass market adoption. Although they would have the advantage of not having speakers and cameras and having that much thinner frame, so they could really hone in on that, and the fact that they aren't Meta. All of that is also assuming that other companies like Apple, Google, or Samsung don't get into this space. And considering every single one of those companies is actively working on XR, I guarantee you it won't be much longer before they do. Right now, Even is the leader in the smart glasses that look and feel normal space, but it is a seriously fragile lead. I mean, we saw what happened to Pebble after the Apple Watch came out. There's also the consideration that you want to make that Even Realities is a very new company. They were only founded in 2023, and the chance that they run out of money or stop providing updates and support for other reasons is much higher than larger companies. Don't look at that. Of course, there is AugmentOS, which can provide support through custom firmware, but the average user is not going to want to spend $600 on a piece of tech and then have to jump through the hoops of custom firmware. Again, there's a reason not many people use Pebbles anymore, and outside of the fact that the Apple Watch exists, it's also because they'd have to sideload the Pebble app that isn't available in the app stores and install a custom store server thing. I would like to make it clear, Rebel is an incredible project, but most people probably don't want to go through all that. Even, no pun intended, with all of that being said, these are unbelievably high quality frames with some impossibly great transparent display tech in a well-rounded package that absolutely justifies the $600 price tag. I'm not going to go out and say that you absolutely need these like I did when I reviewed the Meta Ray-Bans last year, but I will say that the price tag is absolutely worth it if you're into bleeding edge tech like this. Even Realities, I wish you the best of luck fighting against Apple, Google, Samsung, and Meta. Godspeed. If you're interested in more smart glass tech, I've got my Kickstarter backing in for the first gen Lumos smart glasses, which are more of a direct competitor to Meta's Ray-Bans, so get subscribed if you want to see that review when I get them, and maybe even give me a like on this video to support the channel further. You can follow me over on Instagram, Blue Sky, and everything else with the links on screen and in the description below. Plus, you can join up the Discord to directly talk with me and others in the community. I'm a pretty busy person, so I'm probably not on as often as I'd like to be, but you can catch me every every now and then. I did say this in the intro, but I want to seriously reiterate that neither Even Realities, the manufacturer, nor Meta, who I'm in a partnered agreement with, had any sort of early previews or copy approval rights over this video, and I purchased the Even G ones with my own funding. If you want more content, you could click over here to check out my year in review of the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses, which I posted back in November, or you can click over here just to see what YouTube thinks you'll like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.